I signed the termination letter with a steady hand, then froze when the name on the line below mine tightened my throat. Daniel Hart, 38. The man who had stayed late to rescue my product launch without being asked. One more signature and he would be gone. And the ugliest part was how easily I could call it policy and still sleep. That was my talent at 46. Turning choices into procedures, fear into spreadsheets. I set the pen down, stared at the ink drying, and felt something crack beneath the calm I'd built my whole career on. 3 months earlier I'd walked into Meridian Systems as the new CEO with the kind of composure people mistake for kindness. It wasn't kindness. It was control. The board had hired me to stop the bleeding after a brutal quarter, and I did what I always did. Cut delays, cut excuses, cut people. I didn't mingle. I didn't flirt. I didn't even take lunch with the leadership team. My private life had already been sacrificed once, and I'd promised myself it would never again be used against me. Daniel was a senior project lead in operations. Steady, quiet, the type who listened more than he spoke. The first time I noticed him wasn't romantic. It was irritation. In a Monday meeting he corrected a forecast number my finance team had presented. Not smugly, just plainly, like he couldn't let a wrong detail sit on the table. The room went still. Men who'd been here longer than him avoided my eyes, waiting to see if I'd punish the interruption. I didn't. I asked him to show the math. He did. He was right. After that, I watched him the way a pilot watches a gauge. Not because it's pretty, but because it tells the truth. He didn't perform. He delivered. And when he looked at me, it wasn't with fear or flattery. It was with the careful focus of someone deciding whether I was real. The launch week arrived like a storm. Our biggest client wanted an impossible timeline. The board wanted a miracle. And my CFO, Grant Keller, wanted me to fail. Grant was 52, polished, and always smiling as if he enjoyed bad news. He'd built his power in the old regime and hated the fact that I didn't need him to translate the room. On Wednesday he slid a folder onto my desk and said we could cleanly separate from Daniel for performance concerns. His voice was gentle. His eyes weren't. I opened the folder and felt my pulse change. One of the charts inside showed a cost overrun tied to Daniel's unit, dated before I'd arrived. The numbers looked damning, and the board would swallow it whole. Grant's smile tightened. He was giving me an exit ramp. Sacrifice a mid-level man, keep the heat off the C-suite, and look decisive. I should have sent it to legal and demanded an audit. Instead, I did something smaller and darker. I didn't challenge the date. I didn't ask who prepared it. I let the silence stand because the launch was 48 hours away and I was tired of fighting every battle at once. That night, close to midnight, I found Daniel in a conference room lit by a single desk lamp, jacket off, sleeves rolled, a paper cup of coffee cooling beside his laptop. He looked up as if he'd been expecting me. I fixed the integration, he said. No pride. No demand. Just fact. I should have thanked him and walked out. Instead I stepped closer, close enough to see the faint crease at the corner of his mouth when he tried not to smile. I noticed a thin scar near his knuckle, the kind you get from real work, not talking about it. Why are you still here? Yes. His eyes held mine for a beat too long. Because if this fails, he said quietly, they'll blame you. And I don't think you deserve that. The words landed like a hand on my shoulder. Steady, warm, unexpected. For a moment the office wasn't a battlefield. It was just two tired people standing in the quiet. My throat tightened again, not with anger this time. I reached for the folder under my arm, then stopped. The lie inside it felt heavier in his presence. Go home, Daniel, I said, and my voice came out softer than I intended. He hesitated, then nodded. As he passed me, his sleeve brushed my wrist, an accidental touch that sparked straight up my arm. I didn't pull away. Couldn't. He paused at the door as if he might say something else, then didn't. When the door clicked shut, I stood alone with the folder, the pen, and the sudden knowledge that I'd already crossed a line. Not with my body, with my conscience. And now the man I was about to sacrifice was the first person in years who had made me feel like more than a title. My phone buzzed. Grant's text was a single sentence. Need the signed letter before 8 a.m. I looked at Daniel's coffee cup still on the table, the ring stain it left like a small bruise. I picked up the pen again, then slid it into my drawer instead. For the first time since taking this job, I chose delay over certainty, and I knew Grant would come for me. In the glass of the window, my reflection looked calm, but my hands were shaking. By morning, the unsigned letter felt like a live wire in my desk. Grant Keller didn't knock. He appeared in my doorway with a mug and the relaxed face of a man who believed Meridian still belonged to him. 8 a.m., he reminded me, eyes flicking to the empty spot on my credenza where the folder should have been. I kept my voice even. I'm reviewing the file. There are inconsistencies. His smile stayed polite. The board wants action. He said it like virtue, then left me with a smell of coffee and pressure. At noon I called Daniel Hart into my office under the safest pretext I could find. A status update. He arrived with a tablet tucked under his arm, sleeves rolled, tie loosened, rein still clinging to his hair. He stopped a careful distance from my desk. You wanted to see me. Not a question. Fact. I asked about milestones and risks. He answered with calm precision, but I could tell he was braced for something else. When he spoke again, his voice lowered. People are talking, he said. About why I'm here late. About why you're here late. They think I'm your exception. The last word landed like a bruise. The rumor wasn't new. I'd heard it in elevator silences, in the sudden hush when I walked past two assistants. I'd told myself it was harmless noise. The truth was uglier. I'd let the whispering drift because it distracted from the other thing I didn't want examined too closely. The numbers in Grant's folder, the story built to end with Daniel's name. I don't give exceptions, I said too sharply. Daniel's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in disappointment. I know, he replied. That's why it feels strange. My hand moved before I could stop it, sliding across the desk until my fingertips rested near the edge of his tablet. Not touching him. Almost. A small instinct that said stay, even while my words insisted go. I'll handle the noise, I said softer. It isn't fair to you. Daniel's shoulders loosened. Thank you, he murmured. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm not asking for anything. I just want the launch to work. He said it like a promise. After he left, I locked my door and read Grant's file like an enemy's map. The date stamp didn't fit. A note in the margin referenced a meeting that hadn't happened yet. Someone had rebuilt the narrative, clean and persuasive. Grant called. I let it ring. 2 minutes later he came in without his smile. You're stalling, he said. The board is asking why. His gaze flicked toward the hall. Do you like him? The question was soft, which made it worse. This is inappropriate, I said. Grant leaned forward. So is favoritism. So is hiding problems. Sign the letter and the launch stays yours. Refuse, and I'll make sure the board sees what you're protecting. When he left, my hands trembled against the desk. That evening, long after most offices went dark, I passed the conference room and saw Daniel's light again. He was alone, head bent, fingers moving with patient focus, building a solution while others built traps. I stepped inside. He looked up, surprise flickering, then settling. Ms. Vance, he said. Elaine, I corrected, and the single syllable felt like a line crossed. He stood slowly. Are you okay? I should have lied. Instead I told the smallest truth I could afford. Someone wants you gone. His eyes sharpened. Grant, he said like he'd already known. He nodded. Daniel reached for his jacket, then stopped. I can step back, he offered. Whatever keeps you safe. The tenderness in that offer hit harder than the threat. I crossed the space between us and rested my hand lightly on his sleeve, just above his wrist. The touch was brief, almost professional, but it carried everything I wouldn't say. Daniel's breath caught. He didn't move away. I'm not asking you to sacrifice yourself for me, I whispered. But I am asking you to trust me. His gaze held mine steady and warm. I already do, he said. For a second his hand lifted, as if he might cover mine. Then he stopped himself. The restraint made my pulse thud. I pulled my hand back before either of us stepped too far. Go home, I said. I'll call you in the morning. He left, and the room felt colder after him. Back in my office the pen waited, the letter waited. I didn't sign. But I didn't shred it either, and that was the truth I couldn't ignore. I was letting the rumor live because it bought me time. Time to fight Grant. Time to decide what kind of woman I was when no one was watching. That night I couldn't sleep. I drafted an email to compliance requesting an audit, then deleted it, then wrote it again with safer words, as if language could soften truth. My phone lit up with a short message from Daniel. All tests passed. You can breathe. I stared at it far too long. In the dark, his calm felt like a hand at the small of my back, guiding me through a corridor I'd sworn I'd never enter again. I hated myself for needing that comfort, and I wanted it anyway badly. The morning after the launch, the office smelled like victory and fear. People shook hands a little too hard. Smiles lasted a little too long. Meridian's numbers were up, the client was thrilled, and the board sent a single-line email. Well executed. No praise, just approval, the kind that buys you one more week of oxygen. I should have felt relief. Instead I felt the weight of the secret I'd been carrying, because success didn't erase the question Grant had planted. It only made the stakes sharper. Daniel kept his distance in public. He didn't linger near my office. He didn't meet my eyes for too long in meetings. He was careful, and somehow that care felt more intimate than a touch. It said he understood what it cost me to be seen. Still, the rumors didn't die. They evolved. A vice president in a charcoal suit joked about Daniel having a direct line to the CEO. An assistant laughed too loudly. People watched the hallway like it was a theater. I told myself I didn't care, that I'd endured worse. But the truth was uglier. I needed the noise. I let it swirl because it kept other eyes turned away from Grant's numbers and my hesitation. And every time I allowed it, a sour taste rose in my mouth, because it made Daniel collateral in a war he hadn't started. Grant moved with patience, like a man who enjoyed chess more than winning. 2 days after the launch he asked to review post-mortem costs. He stood in my doorway, casual, one hand in his pocket. We should close the Daniel file, he said. No need to let it linger. I held his gaze. We're auditing the report. Grant's smile flickered. Audits take time. The board doesn't like time. He slid a sheet of paper across my desk, an updated projection with a neat note at the bottom. Potential reputational risk. You're new, he continued. You don't know how quickly they turn when they smell weakness. He paused as if offering mercy. Sign the separation. Protect yourself. Protect myself. The phrase tasted like old lessons. I'd spent years building a career on protection. Tight boundaries, clean decisions, no softness anyone could use against me. But Daniel wasn't a weakness. He was a person. A steady, flawed, honorable person. And I was watching him get pulled toward a cliff because it was convenient for my survival. That night I found him in the break room, not working, just staring at the vending machine like it had betrayed him. He looked tired, more tired than he'd ever let himself look in front of me. You're still here, I said. He turned, surprise softening into something warmer. Habit, he replied. Then quieter. Or maybe stubbornness. There was a pause where the air felt thick. I stepped closer, keeping my voice low. Grant is escalating. Daniel's eyes tightened. I figured. He didn't ask why. He didn't demand reassurance. That restraint made my chest ache. Without thinking, I reached for the sleeve of his shirt again, just above his wrist, the same place as before. My fingers brushed the fabric. Brief, almost nothing, yet it steadied me more than any speech. Daniel inhaled slowly, like he was holding himself still. Elaine, he said, my name sounding dangerous in his mouth. People are watching. I pulled back, but the warmth lingered in my fingertips. I need to know something, I said, and hated how small my voice sounded. If this turns ugly, will you tell the truth? Daniel studied me as if reading beyond my words. What truth? He asked gently. My throat tightened. The truth that I'd let rumors live. The truth that I'd stalled because I was afraid. The truth that part of me wanted his presence more than I wanted my own spotless reputation. The whole truth, I managed. Daniel's gaze didn't waver. Yes, he said. Even if it costs me. That answer should have relieved me. Instead it made my stomach twist, because I didn't deserve his honesty. The next day the trap snapped. It happened in a leadership meeting with 10 people around the table, and one empty chair that should have belonged to our legal counsel. Grant presented a slide deck titled, Operational Integrity Review. The words were polished, reasonable, deadly. On slide 4, Daniel's name appeared beside a red arrow and a cost overrun. On slide 5, a timestamp. On slide 6, a recommendation. Immediate separation to demonstrate accountability. Daniel sat 2 seats down from me. Face unreadable, hands folded. He didn't flinch. That calm broke something in me. I heard my own voice before I fully decided to use it. The timestamp is wrong, I said. The room stilled. Grant's smile returned, thin as paper. Are you disputing documented data? He asked, as if I were being emotional. I'm disputing manipulation, I replied. My pulse hammered, but my tone stayed even. We will not make personnel decisions based on a report that hasn't been independently verified. I felt every eye on me weighing, calculating. If accountability is needed, I continued, it begins with the author of the report, not the target. Grant's eyes hardened for the first time. Careful, he murmured, too soft for the others. That's a dangerous hill. I didn't look at him. I looked at Daniel. For the briefest second his mask cracked, and I saw something raw, gratitude mixed with warning. After the meeting, Grant caught me in the corridor. His voice was pleasant, his words sharp. You just made it personal, he said. Now I make it public. He leaned in slightly. I know what you did, Elaine. I know what you let happen. And I know what you're hiding. Then he walked away, leaving my skin cold. That evening my office door clicked shut behind me, and I finally let my shoulders sag. The silence felt heavy. I heard a soft knock. When I opened the door, Daniel stood there, not close enough to touch, but close enough to be felt. You didn't have to do that, he said. His voice wasn't pleading. It was almost tender. I did, I answered, and the truth of it frightened me. Daniel stepped half a pace closer, stopping at the edge of propriety. Grant won't stop, he said. He'll come after you. I stared at him, the lines around his eyes, the quiet strength that didn't demand anything. My hand rose, almost on its own, and hovered near his cheek without landing. I pulled it back at the last second, like someone snatching a secret from the air. I'm not afraid of him, I lied. Daniel's mouth curved, not amused, sad. You don't have to be fearless, he said. Just honest. His words hit like a confession I hadn't spoken yet. When he left, I locked the door and stood in the dark, hearing Grant's threat echo. I'd drawn a line in daylight. Now the night demanded the rest. Either I kept hiding behind policy, or I told the truth about my own stain, about the moment I chose delay over integrity because I needed time, and because I didn't want to lose the man whose quiet presence had started to feel like home. The board meeting was set for Friday at 9, but the pressure arrived Thursday night. Grant emailed 3 directors and me with a subject line that turned my stomach. CEO conduct and risk exposure. Attached were badge logs, late-hour calendar entries, and a neat little summary that didn't accuse me of anything outright. It didn't have to. It only had to suggest a story. Alone with the city smeared across the glass, I understood his game. Poison trust. If the board believed I was compromised, every decision I'd made would be questioned, and Daniel would be destroyed first. Called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. Elaine. The way he said my name steadied me and broke me at once. Don't come in tomorrow, I said. Not until you hear from me. Silence. Then, what's happening? Grant is taking it to the board, I replied. He wants you as the headline and me as the warning label. My throat tightened. I'm sorry. You didn't do this, Daniel said quietly. I almost told him the part one had done. The hesitation, the way I'd let rumors float because they bought me time. Instead I swallowed it. I will handle it. After midnight, I laid Grant's original file beside the newer report. The inconsistencies were obvious once you stopped reading like a victim. A vendor reference that didn't exist yet. A meeting code tied to the wrong quarter. I built a packet for the board. Timeline, side-by-side numbers, request for an independent review. Then I stared at the last page and wrote the line I'd spent my life avoiding. I take responsibility for my delay. Friday morning, the boardroom felt colder than usual. Grant sat 2 seats away, composed, the face of concern perfected for audiences. He spoke first about culture, risk, appearance. He showed the logs. He implied undue influence without saying it. When it was my turn, I didn't start with his lies. Before we discuss Daniel Hart, I said, you need to hear something from me. Grant's eyes narrowed. I delayed action on an HR separation request in March, I continued. I should have demanded an audit immediately. I didn't. I chose delay. My pulse hammered, but my voice held. That delay gave time for a narrative to be built, one that doesn't match the raw facts. I slid my packet across the table. Here are the inconsistencies. Here is my request. An independent investigation into the report's authorship and the underlying data. Pause. If you believe my judgment is compromised, I will step aside during the review. A director asked the question everyone wanted to ask. Are you in a relationship with Mr. Hart? The room went silent. I could have hidden behind legal language. I could have denied everything and watched Daniel burn. Instead, I chose the truth that didn't turn my private life into a spectacle. We are not in a physical relationship, I said. But I care about him. And I refuse to let him be used as a sacrifice. Grant's voice sharpened. She admits bias. She admits poor judgment. Yes, I said. I admit I'm human. What I don't admit is fraud. Legal requested the source files. Grant answered too quickly, then corrected himself. By noon, compliance was in his office. No shouting, just the quiet humiliation of a man whose power depended on secrecy. The board asked me to remain as CEO pending review, but the air had changed. Trust doesn't snap back. That afternoon I found Daniel in the parking garage, leaning against his car as if he'd been waiting there long. He looked up, eyes tight with restraint. It's over, I said. For you too, he asked. Not yet, I admitted. But it will never be the same. You didn't have to put yourself in the line of fire, he said. I did, I replied, and my voice broke. Because I let it go on. Because I was afraid to be seen. The confession hung heavy. Daniel's hand lifted slow, and this time he didn't stop himself. He covered my fingers with his warm and steady, and I felt my control slip. I leaned forward and rested my forehead against his shoulder briefly. His arm came around my back, firm but gentle. When I pulled away, my eyes stung. I'm stepping down during the review, I said. Voluntarily. They'll call it best practice. I'll call it accountability. The words tasted like loss and relief. And you should take that Seattle offer you mentioned. A clean start. His jaw tightened. I don't want to leave you. The ache in my chest opened wider. Then don't, I whispered. I rose on my toes and kissed him. Brief, careful. He didn't deepen it. He just held still and let it matter. I stepped back first because I had to. Go home, I said. Let me finish this the right way. Daniel nodded and backed away like distance was the only thing keeping both of us standing. I watched his taillights fade and understood the price of my choice. I'd saved him from being thrown away. I'd exposed the truth. And now I had to learn how to live without the armor that had protected me for so long. The review ended on a Tuesday morning with a single sentence from legal. Findings substantiate manipulation by the CFO. No evidence of misconduct by CEO or staff. Grant resigned before lunch. Meridian offered me my chair back by evening. I thanked them and asked for 48 hours. The pause felt earned. For the first time in years, I wasn't measuring my worth by a title. I packed my office quietly. Photos I'd never put on my desk, books I pretended I didn't read. The city outside looked the same, but my footing didn't. I went home early, made soup I didn't finish, slept without alarms. The next day I met Daniel in a small park halfway between our worlds, a place without glass walls or badges. He was already there, jacket folded over his arm, the familiar calm in his posture. We stood a few feet apart like we were relearning gravity. "They cleared you," he said. "They did," I answered. "They also offered me the job back." His eyes searched my face, careful not to lean. "And?" I took a breath that felt like stepping into cold water. "I declined." The word surprised me with its lightness. "For now. I want to choose what comes next without defending it." Daniel nodded slowly. "I got the Seattle offer again," he said. "Better money. Less noise." The old armor in me wanted to plan, to calculate distance and calendars. Instead I said, "What do you want?" He smiled just a little. "I want a life where work doesn't decide who I get to care about." We walked, not touching at first, letting the rhythm settle. I told him the rest, the parts I'd hidden. How I'd let the rumors live because they bought time. How I'd been afraid that if I chose integrity loudly, I'd lose him quietly. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he stopped and faced me. "Thank you for telling me," he said. "That matters." His hand found mine, sure and warm. The park noise faded. I leaned into him and he wrapped an arm around my back, not urgent, not possessive, present. We stayed like that until the trembling passed. Weeks unfolded without headlines. I consulted, traveled lightly, cooked dinners that burned a little, learned how to sit with silence. Daniel decided against Seattle. He took a role closer to home, less prestige, more daylight. We were careful, then less so. We kissed without counting seconds. We fell asleep together without speeches. Love arrived not as a storm, but as a habit of care. Coffee made before I asked, a jacket draped over my shoulders when evenings cooled. One night, months later, we sat on the floor of my living room with takeout cartons between us and rain tapping the windows. Daniel was talking about a team he was building, the way his hands moved when he was excited. I watched him and felt a quiet certainty settle. It scared me because it was gentle. "Elaine," he said suddenly, noticing my silence. "What?" He hesitated. "You're smiling like you're about to fire me." I laughed, surprised by the sound. "I'm smiling because I don't want to manage this," I said. He tilted his head. "Manage what?" I took his hands, felt the small scar near his knuckle, the steadiness I'd leaned on. The words were simpler than any policy I'd written. "A future where I pretend this isn't everything." He went still. The rain softened. I didn't kneel or perform. I just told the truth that had been growing. "I've spent my life making choices that kept me safe," I said. "This is the first one that feels like living." My heart beat loud enough to be ridiculous. "Will you marry me?" The question hung between us, honest and unarmored. Daniel didn't answer right away. He breathed. He looked at our hands like he was memorizing them. Then he smiled, the kind that reaches the eyes, and said, "Yes." Not loudly. Completely. We didn't rush to plan. We stayed on the floor and held each other, the rain keeping time. Later, when the lights were low and the city hummed its usual promise, I understood the shape of our ending. Not a triumph, not an escape. An agreement. To choose each other without hiding. To let truth be louder than fear. To build a life where love wasn't a risk to be managed, but a responsibility we wanted.